Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this land banking webinar today. I am Marcela Silva, and I will be teaching you all about the best investment on Earth, which just happens to be Earth. Underneath all of us is the dirt, the land we all walk on every single day, and that will never go out of style and can never be replaced. And it just so happens they're not making any more of it. That's why we have decided to invest in land and help other people take advantage of this opportunity. So a recent study was done that said every 2.5 minutes, the West loses an area of natural land the size of a football field to human development. Every 2.5 minutes, that's a lot of land being consumed. And it's not just population growth that's consuming that land either. And of course, California happens to be losing the most land and the fastest. Right now, we're actually going through the largest land rush in California's history, and most people don't even realize that it's happening. So we'll cover that today as we go through this. But before we get started, I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what land banking is. So this is a backdated Google Earth image of Rancho Cucamonga in 2002. The reason why I'm showing this picture is because it gives a great example of what land banking is and how we go about determining what is the right investments. So part of what we look at is infrastructure. Where is the city or county government spending money, millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars, on new infrastructure? And why are they doing that? For example, in this particular picture, they're spending millions of dollars on a new on and off ramp on the freeway. They're not doing that for no reason. They're doing it because they're planning for the future growth of the area. If you know that ahead of time, if you have the maps, if you have the relationships with the cities and counties, and you know how to acquire land properly, you can position yourself to literally create wealth just by buying that land ahead of the growth. And that's exactly what we do here at Valour. So all you need to do is acquire a piece of land. You don't have to own all of it. You just need to be in that path of growth. You need to be blocking developers from being able to develop. So again, this is 2002. They're building a new on and off ramp. 10 years later, this is what the area happens to look like. There's no more land left. So it went from 50 to 100,000 per acre to 2 to 7 million per acre. But the key is knowing ahead of time that this is happening and acquiring the right land. So we'll go over that today. So again, my name is Marcela Silva. I'm a certified land banking specialist. Before I got into land banking, I used to be a software engineer working for the government at a government laboratory here in California. And back in 2007, when I was working there, the laboratory I was working with went through a major transition. As a result of that transition, they completely changed all of their benefits, including retirement. So at that time, I had to decide, do I take my old 401k and do I roll it into a new 401k program that they were putting together, or do I do something else with it? And I vividly remember at that time, back in 2007, sitting at my kitchen table, looking at my old 401k statement, thinking to myself, you know, the only way this really goes up is when I put money into it. This is ridiculous. I'm never going to be able to retire at this rate. So I decided I needed to do something different, that the traditional way of just saving and putting the money in the 401k wasn't going to get me to the dreams and goals that I desired for my future. Especially since you need a lot of money to retire with. $1 million is nowhere near enough money to retire on. They're saying $2.5 million is the new average that Americans should shoot for. And, you know, depending on the lifestyle that you want to lead, you probably will need more than that, especially if you live in California. So for me, I decided I wasn't going to go the 401k route. I wanted to invest in real estate. Why real estate? Well, it's created wealth for people throughout history. I grew up watching my parents invest in real estate, And they mostly bought dirt, land. But I didn't really pay attention to what they were doing until I happened to find land banking, and I had that natural connection to it. So I started going out and looking for different real estate investment opportunities. I even got my real estate license just for my own knowledge. And I went to seminars, read books, and along the way I decided I really did not want to become a landlord dealing with tenants, toilets, and termites. Not that that's bad or that that's wrong, that just wasn't for me. I didn't have the time, patience, or funds to go that route. So then one day I happened to go to a seminar about real estate investing, and I happened to sit next to a lady who started telling me about land banking. And I was like, land banking, what is that? I was very curious about it because I had never heard of it before. But again, it had to do with land, and I already had that natural affinity and connection towards it because of watching my parents invest in land. And today they have retired because of their land. And so I went and learned all about it, saw a presentation kind of similar to what you guys will see today. And I had that gut feeling. I knew instantly that this was the investment I needed to get into. So I took my old 401k, I rolled it over into what's called a self-directed IRA and used that to purchase my very first property. So what I purchased was 1.25 acres, zoned heavy industrial. Purchase price was $70,000, works out to $1.34 per square foot. And I will go into great details about where this particular property is located and where all of our properties are located. But this was in March of 2008 when I bought this property. So luckily I took my money out of the stock market before I lost a bunch of it, because that was one of the worst downturns in history at that time in 2008. Took my money out of the stock market, bought this land, and when I tell people that, sometimes they say, oh, well, value of your land must have gone down because you bought it kind of right as the market was starting to turn. And I said, actually, it didn't. Not only did it not go down, it actually increased in value. So right after I bought the property, 2 new developments came in right next to it within the first year. Half a mile to the south was a brand new commercial development with gas station, restaurant, shops. That was not there when I bought my land. And about 3/4 of a mile to the right up here, a company called eSolar, which happens to be partially funded by Google, opened up their very first test alternative energy plant. So would you agree now in this picture, there's less land available to be developed because those new developments came in? Well, I'm going to show you more about how that kind of works and how land values increase over time. But before I get into that, land selling in that area, I mean, just 6 months after I bought my property, CBRE was selling same zoning land as mine, industrial, a little bit smaller than mine. Mine was 1.25 acres for $199,500 or $3.91 per square foot. That's almost 3 times what I bought my property for. Again, I bought mine for $1.34 per square foot. So needless to say, I was very happy with my investment and actually ended up deciding to retire from being a software engineer to become a full-time land banker after I got to know more about the company and everything that they did. It just lit my soul on fire. I had a passion for this and I wanted to let other people know about this amazing opportunity. A couple of years ago, land in that area right next to my land was selling for $5.51 per square foot. So while I'm holding my land, being a lazy landowner, not doing anything with it, which is why I love land, because it causes me no stress or hassle or headaches, the value of it continues to increase. And it's helping me reach my personal goals of financial independence. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons why people invest with me, whether it's their own personal retirement, realizing that they're never going to be able to save enough money to retire on, or they don't want to have to work, until they're in their 80s, 90s. Who knows how long people are going to live these days? I mean, especially with the technology and medicine these days, people are living a lot longer. So you need a lot of money to be able to retire. And people are looking for alternative ways to do that. And land has actually been a way that people have created wealth throughout history. If you think about it, wars have been fought over land. And it's simply because there's only a limited supply of it. So whether it's for legacy, retirement, financial independence, to hedge against other traditional markets, land might be a great opportunity for yourself. Here's a list of some of my investors ranging in ages from 20s to 70s, all different types of professionals, from finance professionals, engineers, coaches, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys, mortgage, real estate agents. The list goes on and on. A lot of my investors are multiple investors, meaning that they acquire multiple properties through us because our land is very affordable and every piece of land is very unique, different zonings, different locations, etc. I personally, with my husband, we own 9 properties, which equates to about 1.5 million square feet of land in the most high growth areas. I bought that land for about 50 cents per square foot on average. Imagine if I sell that land for $5 per square foot. I could sell it for $10 per square foot. Some of those properties, if I held them long enough, I could easily sell them for $40, $50 per square foot or more. So today what we're going to talk about is, what is land banking? Who is Valour, which is a company I represent? What are the important economic trends converging in the areas where we invest, causing it to invest to grow at a rapid pace, and then how to invest. So by definition, land banking is the practice of buying affordable, pre-developed land located in the path of growth. You might recognize some of these names here on the screen. These are people who have created wealth through land. Bob Hope, for example, most people know of him as a famous entertainer. But what they don't know is he was a huge landowner. He owned over 12,000 acres of land throughout Southern California. So he used his entertainment business to create the cash flow, but he used the land to create the wealth for himself and his family. So here's a great example of a pre-developed high growth area. This is Milpitas, California in 1993. For those of you who are not familiar with Milpitas, it's about 20 miles to the southeast of San Francisco, located in the San Francisco Bay Area. The entire San Francisco Bay Area is a very good example of a missed land banking opportunity. It's too late to invest in land here now. But had you had the foresight back then, for example, this is Milpitas, again, 1993. When I say a pre-developed area, we're looking for areas that have existing developments, existing infrastructure, but there's still a lot of land available to be developed. That's when you want to invest in it. It's still affordable, but it's also in a high growth area if you understand the economics of the area. So in this picture, you could have purchased land here for $1,000 to $50,000 per acre, depending on zoning and location. I actually know somebody who bought 10 acres of land here in this area for $10,000 back in this time. When he bought it, everyone said he was crazy, but since he bought it, a massive super target was put on his land. He created generational wealth just by having the foresight and vision to buy that one piece of land. And now everyone says he's so lucky. For us, it has nothing to do with luck. It's all about having, again, that vision and that foresight to acquire that land ahead of time. Backed by all of the research and experience that we have, we position our investors to create the wealth that they desire. So 1,000 to 50,000 per acre in this picture. 10 years later, you can see the amount of development that's come in. So obviously it's a high growth area. Now it's roughly $500,000 to $1 million per acre, simply because of all the growth that's come in. There's less land available. I always tell people we're investing in land because they're not making any more of it. It is a finite asset and running out very quickly here in California. And today, roughly 2 to 7 million per acre. And the best part about land is it's not going to go from 2 million per acre back down to 50,000 per acre, simply because they're not making any more of it. There's not going to magically appear some huge amount of land somewhere. As there's less available, the value continues to rise. That's why I always tell my investors, become a land hoarder like myself. The longer you hold it, the more it's worth. Don't be in a rush to sell that land, because 10 years is going to go by in a flash, and that's typically the average time frame that people hold land, 7 to 10 years. Can it happen sooner? Absolutely. Could it take longer? Yes. And it could be your choice if it takes longer because you don't want to sell. And I've heard story and story and story, time and time again, where people don't sell the land and people keep coming back to it, wanting their land, and the price keeps going higher and higher. So we'll explain how all of that works here shortly. A little bit about our company. Our company is called Valour Enterprises. We are located in Southern California, Van Nuys specifically. This is the building where our headquarters is located, on the 6th floor of that building. All of our investors are welcome to go there, meet the owners of the company. We are land experts. We have been in the business since 1979, for 40 years. And our core competency is doing the comprehensive analysis, or quote unquote due diligence, of the land itself. We make sure that it's high quality land, fully researched, located in high growth areas, and we put it in our exclusive land inventory. Nobody else has access to that land inventory except for Valour and Valour investors. So when you buy land from us, you're actually buying it directly from us, which is a good thing. We put our money into it first. We don't want to risk our money, and we don't want to risk our investors' monies. That's why this due diligence process is so important, and I will take you through that due diligence process here shortly. We have over 22,000 investors in our database, 0 consumer-related lawsuits, and have bought and sold over 100,000 acres of land throughout California. So the important thing is we never speculate. Every property is carefully selected based off of what we call our 16, 3, and 10 method of comprehensive analysis. This is so important, and this is where most people fail when trying to invest in land on their own. This is why land investment is typically considered to be land speculation, because people don't know how to do the proper research. And they go to a real estate agent expecting the real estate agent to provide this information to them, and that's not the real estate agent's expertise. It really takes a lot of knowledge and know-how to understand how to buy land properly. So over the past 40 years, we have created this perfect scrubbing process, if you will, that we take every property through. And out of 30 properties we look at any one time, we purchase about 1. It's a 30-to-1 ratio because we're so strict with the criteria that every property must adhere to. So let's look at that 16, 3, and 10. First is the 16. We want to make sure that it's quality, developable, marketable, legal piece of land. There's no issues with it. For example, if you buy a piece of land and there's a red-legged toad on that land, that red-legged toad is an endangered species. If you buy a piece of land with that little guy on there, he has more rights than we do here in California. Guess what? You're out of luck. Can't develop the land. Endangered species there, right? You wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want toxic waste on your land, which would cost millions of dollars to clean up. You want to have access to your land. You don't want it landlocked. There's so many different things you have to be aware of with land. And most of the time, you cannot see it with your eyes. And a lot of time, people, when they try to go buy land on themselves, they're just buying it based off of price alone or site alone. And that's a very risky way to invest in land. Land is very risky if you do not know what you're doing. Our properties go through 16 different layers of maps before we ever consider acquiring the land. So I'm going to show you an example of how land is very different than traditional real estate. So when you sell a house or you go to buy a house, whichever the case, call up a real estate agent, and they're going to tell you what the house is worth based off of comps, comparable prices in the neighborhood. And that's going to affect the value of that neighborhood. Well, with land, you can't do that. Literally land touching each other, parcels of land right next to each other, could be worlds apart in value, even though they're touching. Just like the fingers on your hand, similar, but completely different. So here's an example. A Valour investor purchases 10-acre parcel of land from Valour for $150,000. And when they were purchasing it, they decided they wanted to do their own due diligence. So what do you think they did? They went online to see what other land in the area was selling for. And they happened to find another 10-acre parcel literally selling right next to the one that they were buying from Valour, right next to it. And that one online was only selling for $50,000. Now remember, they were buying it from Valour for $150,000. Same size, right next to it, online only $50,000. So now they're thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, I'm a genius. I'm just going to buy the one online. If you want to take that risk, good luck. And keep in mind, land is buyer beware. They don't have to disclose anything to you. And most of the times, whoever's selling it don't even realize what's wrong with the land itself. So if you have the proper maps, like we do, we have a whole map room where we've been collecting maps for over 40 years. We have access to maps that not even the cities or county have access to. They actually come to us to see some of our maps, which that's a whole other story in and of itself. I'm not going to get into today. But you overlay the map on top of the land, and you can see the Valour land totally clear. The land selling online, there's some dotted lines running through the middle of it. Now, if you physically drive there and go look at it, it all looks the same. What they don't see and what they don't have to disclose to you is that there's a utility easement running through the middle of the land, preventing it from being developable. So if you bought that land thinking you were getting a discount, in the long run, you actually ended up losing the $50,000 because you can never develop it. So the biggest risk in land is not what you see, it's what you don't see, the hidden risks, the hidden landmines that can really hurt you when investing in land. And that's why most people fail when doing land investments on their own, because they don't know how to do it properly. But the good news is Valour takes care of handling all of these risks and taking care of them ahead of time, so there are no risks associated with the land itself. Risks that we can control, just to be clear. Am I saying there's no risk with land? No. The risk that we cannot control when it comes to land is you, the investor. Number one, did you buy land with monies that are patient monies? Funds that you can put away for 7 to 10 years, long-term investable funds. And number two, are you patient enough to hold that land until the market comes to you? What do I mean by market coming to you? I'll explain this in great detail here shortly. But when a developer comes knocking on your door, begging you for your land, that is a very powerful position to be in, and it can position you to create tremendous returns from your property. So the risk is you and your patience and the time it takes. Then we have the 3-mile ring of development going along with the 16, 3, and 10. 3-mile ring of development. The Urban Land Institute has done studies that has found when a new development comes into an area, it causes the surrounding values of land within a 3-mile radius to increase in value. So these numbers I'm about to give you, again, are coming from the Urban Land Institute. Let's say you own this property right here in the middle, and a new development comes in 3 miles away. For every new development within a 3-mile radius, that's going to increase the value of your land by 10% appreciation. So you're holding that land, doing absolutely nothing to it. Developer is spending millions of dollars 3 miles away, and you're creating equity in your land as a result of it. We call that ODM, other developers' monies. All new development within a 2-mile radius is a 20% appreciation, and within a 1-mile radius is a 30% appreciation. So as developments start to come in within the 3-mile radius, you're going to see the value of your land increasing over time as you are holding it. So while you're being a patient land owner, the value of your land is increasing in value as new development comes in within a 3-mile radius. And all of the properties that we provide to our investors must have existing as well as new developments coming in within that 3-mile radius. And then 10 is the 10 key indicators locating the high growth pre-developed area, like the San Francisco Bay Area used to be. So flat developable land, population projections, water supply, infrastructure, accessibility by freeway, air, and rail, adequate utilities. Number 7 is very important. We want an area that has commercial, residential, and industrial developments coming in. You do not want to invest in an area that would be considered just a bedroom community, meaning just residential for the most part. You also want number 10 to be there, a pro-business city government, a city government that wants to grow, a city government that does not make it hard for developers to develop. So I'm going to use the Bay Area as an example. If you're familiar with Pleasanton, California, Lafayette, California, Danville, California, those would not be pro-business city government, cities that you would want to own land in. They make it very hard for developers and businesses to come into their city. So being aware of what's happening there, also important. Our guarantees to our investors: number 1, you get the grant deed, which is the highest possible ownership recorded with the county recorder's office. So when you buy a property from Valour, you're not buying into a share of it. You are actually acquiring the land itself. Valour is not cutting up land. So for example, they're not going out buying 100 acres of land, cutting it up, and then selling off the pieces. No, you actually are not allowed to do that in California. Whatever we acquire, so if they bought 100 acres, they're selling that 100-acre parcel. Although 100 acres, just so you know, is pretty much impossible to find these days. Large pieces of land like that really no longer exist. Those are dinosaurs. Usually it's 1 1/4 acres, 2.5 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, possibly 20 acres, potentially more, but that all just depends. So you get the grant deed when you buy the property. You are the owner. And you also get policy of title insurance, which ensures the legal transfer and marketable title to the property, which is paid for by Valour. So like I said, I personally own 9 properties. My goal is to acquire at least 30, and I have a grant deed and title insurance for every single property. And then our 3 points of service. It's really hard to overestimate the value of the service that we provide to our investors, which happens to be part of the package. It's free of charge to our investors. So number 1, providing the quality property. All of the properties we provide have been fully researched. I already went over that due diligence process with you. So you can have peace of mind knowing when you buy the property from Valour that research has been done and it's a quality parcel. After you purchase with us, it's not like, here's your land, goodbye, good luck, I hope you do well. We continually provide you with updates, letting you know what's happening in the area, new developments coming in, so much so that we actually have weekly webinars that you can attend with the co-owner of Valour, the COO, while he provides the latest and greatest information about what's happening in these areas. So half an hour Tuesday nights, you can get on a webinar and hear all about that. We also have investor update seminars. I meet with my investors in person to give updates, that type of thing. So keeping you updated, because guess what? The land is never going to call you on the phone and say, this is what's happening in the area, which is great because it's not going to bother you. But at the same time, you have no idea what's happening there unless you plug in. You don't have to plug in, but we recommend that you do so you can see what's going on in these areas. And then after you purchase, or this is where you make the money. This is what we call the arbitrage for land. So what do I mean by arbitrage for land? With arbitrage, you act as a not so willing seller, and you will have a very willing buyer coming to you begging you for your land. That is what you want. That's what you want to wait for. So here's a perfect example of it. And this is the slides I was showing you in the very beginning. So we know this is a high growth area. We acquire this property right here. Let's say it's this little square. Maybe it's 2.5 acres of land. Okay, you're holding it. Then one day a developer comes along and decides, well, this developer decides I'm going to acquire all of this land. Let's say it's 100 acres. Well, who happens to be right in the middle of that? You do. You are literally blocking the developer from being able to develop. Like I mentioned earlier, that is a very powerful position to be in. So you own that land, developer comes along, they need your land. What do? They figure out who you are. They just go to the county recorder's office, figure out who owns that land, and they start contacting you. They might send you letters, they might email you, they might call you. Depending on how desperate they are, they might even show up at your front door. It's happened before. And that's exactly what you want. So they're contacting you, and we tell you, don't contact them back. Contact us first. Let us know what they're sending you. And then we will go back to Velour, and Velour will tell us exactly what you need to say back to that developer so that we can start helping you to negotiate to get the highest and best price for your property. And when I say highest and best price, I'm talking far above market values here. Because again, you own a resource that somebody else needs. They're not making any more of it. They can't go to Costco and buy a piece of land off the shelf. There's only so much of it available. And again, that's why we invest in land, because it is a finite and limited resource. And when we help you do these negotiations, we do it completely free of charge. So let's say you sell your property for a 500% return. Definitely possible, could be even more. And we don't take a single dime from you when we help you do those negotiations. All of these services are completely free of charge to Velour investors exclusively. So that's all the information about the company and the research that we do. Now we're going to get into where we invest and why we invest there. We only invest in California, and you're going to find out why as I go through this. First off, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. It surpassed the UK just last year in 2018. So having a strong economy is a very important part when it comes to growth and development and owning land. Some of you who might recognize this area if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, this is what it used to look like. This is actually just over the hill from where I live. This is Dublin, California. What it used to look like. Cows, horses, middle of nowhere type of situation. And this is what it looks like today. And actually this picture even itself is kind of old. There's more development than that. Literally the hills are covered. Everything is covered in development. Land here in this area is selling for well over $1 million per acre. A few years ago, a local family owned the Wallace Ranch, which is in Dublin, California. It was that picture I showed you with the cows on it. They had purchased the property. It's 184 acres for about $200 an acre. They ended up selling it for $200 million, $1.1 million per acre, to a housing developer who needed it. All they did was own the land, and the developer came along and knocked on their door. It's really that simple. This is what Walnut Creek used to look like. Bunch of orchards, a couple little homes here and there, and what it looks like today. No more land left, except for parks. This is Southern California, Westwood, California. If I told you to buy land here, you'd probably say I was crazy. What, the middle of nowhere? No, thank you. But had you bought that land there, you would now be wealthy. And everyone would say how lucky you are. And I would say how smart you are. Again, no more land left. The reason why I show these before and after pictures is because history continues to repeat itself throughout California, and we're just taking advantage of this fact. Here's a great example of someone, and typically it's always been farmers who are land bankers because those were the people who owned the land. Most people don't save money to invest in land, especially here in America. Other countries, that's more their culture to buy land, but in America, we've kind of lost sight of the value that land has. Part of it is probably because people don't know how to go about doing it properly either. So this gentleman, Hiroshi Fujishige, he was a farmer. Poor farmer came to America, bought a 56-acre strawberry farm for $3,500 in Anaheim, California, and for 20 years, Disney was knocking on his door, begging him to buy his land, and he kept turning him down, turning him down. Every time he turned him down, what do you think happened to the value? Went up, went up, went up. Finally ended up selling it for $90 million. From $3,500 to $90 million. If that's not a good investment, I don't know what is. That's what land can do. By the way, land is not controlled like so many other markets. Stock market, housing market, those are very controlled markets. The land market is not controlled, which is great for us. That is why we are able to get tremendous returns for our properties. So we're going to talk about land scarcity here in California. Land is running out and running out very quickly. This is a map of California. Everything on this map that is colored, that matches up with that legend there, is all Bureau of Land Management federal government land. That equates to about 46.6 million acres of California's land is owned by the government. And yes, you can see there's some white spots in the middle of that. Yes, you could own that land. However, that land is completely landlocked by government land, so there's never going to be any major growth happening in those areas. So unless you want to be a hermit living out in the middle of nowhere, that is not good investment land. I have heard many horror stories about people who have bought land out in those types of areas thinking, oh, I'm getting a great deal, or, oh, you know, there's some developer who is going to build a retirement community, and then, so I bought some land, and then, you know, the developer ended up not building it, and now I have this worthless piece of land. Well, congratulations, that's called land speculation. That's not how you invest in land properly. Again, not all land is the same. It's very difficult to do this if you don't have the research and expertise behind it. So half of California's land is off the map for development because of government land. Now, if you've ever driven down the Central Valley of California, down I-5, let's say from Sacramento or San Francisco down to LA, think about what you see the whole way. Very boring drive, a lot of stinky cows, a lot of land, a lot of farmland. That's that entire Central Valley. That white space now matches up with this green and yellow. That is all California Williamson Act land. It cannot be developed. It has to stay as farmland or open space. So us as land bankers, we don't want to touch that land. We don't even want to be within a mile of that land because it's preventing the land from being able to be developed. That land is mainly reserved for farming. California produces most of the produce as well as beef for a lot of America. It's a $43 billion industry for California. One of the largest industries in California. Guess what? They don't want to lose that land to development. So they protect it in the Williamson Act, and they're continually putting more land into the Williamson Act, protecting that land, which is a great thing, in my opinion, because we definitely need to protect and preserve a lot of land. So there's 100 million acres total in California, a huge state. This was a study done by UC Berkeley in 1998. 1998, by the way, is 21 years ago. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but 21 years, 1998, I mean, that flew by so fast, unfortunately. So 100 million acres total in California. You subtract out all the government land, all the farmland, all the land that's already been developed, all the land that cannot be developed for various different reasons. There's only 2% of California's land left to be developed 21 years ago, 2 million acres. And I can guarantee you there has been a lot of development that's happened in the last 21 years. If you live here, you've seen it yourself. So land is running out quickly. This number right here, this 2%, is the reason why California real estate is so expensive, is so much more expensive than most other states throughout the country. Because there's very little land supply left. There's little land to put houses on. And by the way, land contributes far more than half the cost of housing here in California. So this is a study done looking into the future. And by the way, all of this is third-party information. Velour does not make up any of these studies. We're just very good at putting together the necessary information to create this land banking opportunity for people. So feel free to look this information up on yourself. By the year 2035, so in the next 18 years, California is going to consume 3,700 square miles of land. By the way, 18 years goes by in a flash too. I mean, those of you who have kids, right? 10 years was nothing. 18, I mean, they're already graduating high school. You can't even believe it. Blink of an eye. 3,700 square miles of land is going to be consumed in the next 18 years. That's 2.3 million acres here in California. Where are they going to get 2.3 million acres? I have no idea. The main thing is it's running out, and it's running out quickly. That's why we're acquiring it as quickly as we can, me personally. And I'm helping as many other investors acquire it as well, because it is going to run out at some point. And the question is, did you take advantage of this opportunity, or did you let it pass you by? Do you want to be someone who says, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, or I'm happy I did? Population. So when you combine a little land supply with huge population, you get a great land banking opportunity. By the way, this is a picture of a LA County freeway, Los Angeles freeway. And we're starting to see this everywhere throughout California. Traffic is insane. So December 2015, this article came out, California's population hit 39 million. 2 years later, December 2017, comes out, population nears 40 million. By the way, that's the number of people that can actually be counted here in California. So our population grew roughly 1 million people in 2 years. If you look at the history of California's population growth, it usually grows on an average between 300 or 400,000 people. So there might be people out there saying people are leaving California. Sure, some people leave. There's a lot of people coming here, and there's a lot of people having babies. People love California for many different reasons. On top of it being an economic powerhouse, there's a lot of jobs here. This is a study done by the California Department of Finance. They're saying by the year 2035, we're going to hit 45 million people. And if you look at their history of population projection, they are usually very low on their population projection. It actually ends up being a lot more than what they say. In either case, a lot of population requires a tremendous amount of development. So we focus exclusively within a 60-mile radius. That 60-mile circle that you see there around downtown Los Angeles holds only 5% of California's land. If you look at that circle, a third of it is in the water. If you can imagine, I mean, even I personally am surprised that there is still available and affordable land located within a 60-mile radius of downtown LA. And over 60% of California's population is located in that 60-mile circle. That's why when you go to Disneyland, you're sitting in traffic the whole time. It's just the way it is. That's where people live. And it's, like I said, an economic powerhouse. This is why we invest in this area. And there's also not those barriers to development that I was just showing you guys about. So here's another map that's showing the 60-mile radius. This is LA County. If you look at my mouse here, this is the western border, and here is the eastern border. The southern part of LA County, that is all LA metro area. There's no more land left to be developed in that area. It's maxed out. The central part of LA County, that green, that's all Angeles National Forest. Cannot be developed. Those are mountain ranges. So you're not going to see growth happening there. Last remaining developable land in all of LA County, which by the way happens to be the most populated county with a roughly 10.3 million people in the entire United States, is located in what is known as the Antelope Valley, homes to the cities of Lancaster and Palmdale. So this is one of the last remaining areas where we are still able to invest in. We have invested in 5 different areas throughout Southern California, a lot within this 60-mile radius. However, most of that is no longer available because of all the growth that's come in. On top of it being the last remaining developable land, there are also multiple economic drivers causing this area to grow beyond just the population growth. So we're going to go into some of those economic drivers. And by the way, this is why we only invest in California. Most other states out there just do not have the economic opportunity and growth and multiple different trends causing that area to grow. People say, why not Las Vegas? You know, Nevada, Arizona, Texas. A lot of those places have a little bit of population and a lot of land. They also don't have multiple economic drivers causing those areas to grow, like Nevada. Okay, you've got Las Vegas, entertainment, gambling, not much else. So the economy goes down, people don't go gamble, they don't go do entertainment, values of real estate collapse. That's not what you want. You want areas that are growing regardless of what's happening in the economy. And when you have multiple economic drivers, you can see that happen. So this is known as our Area 1, Antelope Valley, Palmdale, Lancaster. Like I said, this is all third-party information. The Antelope Valley is 60 freeway miles to downtown LA. Lower property tax rates in this area. So real quick with property taxes and land, yes, when you own land, you do have to pay property taxes. However, all of our properties are under Proposition 13 here in California, so you're looking at paying no more than roughly 1.3% of the purchase price of the property. And that's typically at the most you'll pay. Usually the land is much less than that 1.3% because it's just raw land. There's no buildings on it. So they typically assess the value of the land very low, which is great for us. I mean, for me, I pay no more than $2,000 a year on all 9 of my properties. That one I showed you in the very beginning that I bought, I pay about $400 a year in property taxes. And that is pretty much the main holding cost when it comes to land. So as long as you're paying your property tax bills, you're good. You don't really have to do anything else with it. It's just dirt. You're not going out there and putting up fences or anything like that. Nothing to maintain. Also, this area has been voted LA County's most business-friendly city. Both Lancaster and Palmdale have won this award multiple different times. So like I said, a pro-business city government is what you want. These areas, that 60-mile circle that I was showing you is considered the LA 5-county region. That is almost the 15th largest economy in the world. And LA County just by itself is almost the 19th largest economy in the world, just a county by itself. That's why we invest there. Nowhere else compares. This was a study done by the Southern California Association of Governments regarding population growth. Excuse me, I'm going to pause real quick to get some water. All right, sorry about that. So again, Southern California Association of Governments did this study regarding population growth in Southern California. V1 is our Velour Area 1. If you notice, the southern part of LA County, they don't expect much population growth because they don't have the land to sustain much population growth. Where is the population growing? Where there is available and affordable land. This is the Antelope Valley area. darkest red, more than 100% population growth expected there. The V2, V3, and V5 are some of the other areas where we have invested in the past, but it's no longer available at this point. The mayor of Lancaster, he said, before I leave this office, there will be 1 million people here. Today in the overall Antelope Valley, there's about 600,000. He says, before my successor leaves, there will be 3 million people here. He is a very smart guy. He understands economics. He's positioning his city to grow sustainably for, he's looking 50 years into the future of what is going to become for that city and what's going to happen for future generations. He's also doing a lot to attract a lot of business into his city. So with all the population growth, obviously we need a lot of homes. Homes require a lot of land, can't build it in air. In California as a whole, we need to build 3.5 million new homes by the year 2025. Last I checked, that was only 6 years from now, 3.5 million new homes. That's a lot of homes that need to be built because we just don't have the supply that we need for the population growth that we have. Plus, in 2008, they stopped building homes, but population didn't stop growing. So that's why we have this huge housing gap. And like I said earlier, land prices contribute far more than half the cost of housing here. On average, land contributes about 61.1% of the overall value of a home real estate, traditional real estate here in California. So I say, heck with dealing with the house that needs to be fixed up, has to have renters, just like I said, tenants, toilets, and termites. I'm not interested. I would rather just own the part that actually holds the value, which is the dirt itself. It is the most expensive part of the home buying and home building equation. So on top of population and housing, we also need a huge amount of land for industrial, trade and logistics, manufacturing. This is a huge part of the economics there in Southern California. So the Port of LA and Port of Long Beach are the busiest ports in the entire United States. They are huge ports. If you've ever seen them, you know what I'm talking about. You can see the amount of traffic that continues to increasingly come in and out of those ports. I mean, if you think about it, it's basically the gateway to the Pacific, to Asia, and all the goods coming in and out of there. On top of that, we export a lot out of those ports as well. So recently they spent $6 billion, with a B, billion dollars upgrading the infrastructures at those ports because of all of that traffic. Now, why do we care about that? It's not like there's any land available at that port. The reason why we care about it is because as soon as those goods come in, they have to go to a huge distribution center. Distribution centers can sit on anywhere from 40 to 200 acres of land. For example, this distribution is for Skechers shoes. It was built in 2009 during the downturn. People are still buying shoes. People are still having babies even during downturns. So when you think about that, land is actually a contrarian investment when bought properly. What does that mean? It means that it can make money in both the boom and bust cycles of the economy when you buy it right, meaning it has to be in those high growth areas where there's strong economy and growth happening regardless. So that's a lot of land needed just for distribution centers. And where in LA or Long Beach are you going to find that much land? You're not going to. And it wouldn't be affordable anyways. Also, manufacturing. The US is the #1 manufacturing country in the world. LA County is the #1 manufacturing center in the entire country. A lot of manufacturing happening there. If you've ever seen a manufacturing building, by the way, they are massive, massive buildings. So the mayor of Lancaster has big business dreams with China. He's actually learned how to speak Chinese, flies to China on his own dime to go talk to businesses, manufacturers, alternative energy companies to promote his city internationally so that they come and put their factories right there in his town. thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for promoting my land. He says, if you have a factory to build, you want to build it here. We have cheaper land, cheaper energy costs. Everything points to building it here. And they're only 60 miles away from downtown LA. And you have the ports right there. All the signs are there. And then you have a city opening their arms saying, hey, come put your business here. You get a bunch of incentives. Then you have things like the Amazon effect. What's the Amazon effect? Well, everybody's going to e-retailing. Now Amazon is the largest company in America, right? They are larger than the 8 largest retailers combined. That's how big they are. They're huge. They're putting these other companies out of business. The Walmarts and the Best Buys of the world are going to have to get on board with doing business the way that Amazon does it, or they're going to go out of business. So basically, what Amazon does is they want to provide their goods to their customers within a 24 to 48-hour period. How are they going to do that? They're going to do that by building massive fulfillment centers, as you can see in this picture, huge, takes up a lot of land within a 100 to 200 mile radius of the major metro markets. LA is basically the largest major metro market out there. Have to have the land for it, which is what we're acquiring. Then you add Proposition 64 on top of all of this. By the way, all of these different things I'm showing you is competing for the same land. Proposition 64 was the legalization of recreational cannabis here in California, passed just last year in 2018. Why do we care about it? Well, it's a very land-hungry industry, requires huge grow facilities, which in this case are large industrial buildings, high security buildings, and Lancaster happens to be one of the best locations for it in LA County. I'm not going to go into all the reasons behind why that is today, but just know that they are coming in and coming in quickly. Just in the past year, Lancaster has had 8 new cannabis facilities put in to build new facilities there in Lancaster alone. So the cannabis industry is huge. They're saying by the year 2020 it's going to rival the $7 billion wine industry. I've heard other studies say that it already has hit that $7 billion. By the year 2030, it's going to be a $75 billion business. Land-hungry industry. So I will always say, instead of investing in the companies, because you never know what company is going to do well or fail, invest in the asset that every company and everybody needs, which is the land. Also located down there are huge Department of Defense contractors like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, NASA, Edwards Air Force Base. They are doing a lot of contracts. Billions of dollars is coming in to fund new latest and greatest technology for the government and other private companies as well, bringing in a lot of business, a lot of jobs, and a lot of population. So all of these different things that I just mentioned all go on to the same type of land, which happens to be industrial. This was a study done by the Southern California Association of Governments regarding industrial space in Southern California. They say that Lancaster and Palmdale hold 71.5% of LA County's total potential space needed for these distribution fulfillment centers, warehouses, etc. The study goes on to say that this region will run out of suitably zoned vacant land around 2028. They're telling us right now the land is going to run out. I own industrial land. I've helped position many other investors in industrial land. Keep in mind, however, that's only one type of land that we have. So here's an example of a property that my husband and I purchased in November of 2014. Actually, sorry, December 2014. 1.84 acres. You can see the size up here, 1.84 acres. Bought it for $92,000. Not unbelievably unaffordable. $92,000. zoned light industrial. We just talked about industrial and everything that's needed, that needs it. This is the property right here, that little square. So this map that we're looking at is called a plat map. I'm not going to go into the details of the map itself, but every property comes along with one of these plat maps. So there's the property. By the way, I've never seen this property. I've never stepped foot on it. I don't care. It's just raw dirt. Like I said, it causes me no hassle. I just pay the property taxes and move on with my life. There's no for sale sign on it. And one day, out of the blue, about 2.5 years after we bought it, developer contacts us and says, hey, we want to buy your land. Here's an offer. Okay. Great offer, $365,000 in 2.5 years. Again, we bought it for $92,000. Thank you. We contacted Valour. Valour gave us some details on what to say back to them and what to ask for. 10-minute phone call. We, called them up, asked for some information, said, by the way, thank you, but no thank you on this offer. We need more than that. Next offer comes in April of that year, 2017. That's roughly a month later. 500,000, a little over 500,000. Wow, okay. For a 10-minute phone call, that's what I call a great investment. And we still said, no, that's not good enough. I was not interested in selling the property because I know once we do, I'm never going to be able to get a property like this in this area again. Didn't sell it. Another 5-minute phone call. Less than a month later, new offer, 600,000. Our property went up in value, $500,000 in a little over 2 years. That's what land can do. And the value, I mean, you saw how much it went up in just a 3-month time period, because you don't go based off of comps. It's based off of how desperate that developer is. So we actually ended up not selling that property. We didn't want to, because we learned that there were other investors nearby who were selling land for well over what they were offering us. So we decided to hold. And guess what happened? A whole new developer came around this year, January of this year, and guess what we told them? Starting price, $600,000. So right now we're in negotiations for, I believe, around $750,000 on that property. That is part of the arbitrage that land goes through when a developer comes knocking on your door. And you can see we were not in a rush to sell that land. I am not in a rush to sell my land. So the longer I hold it, the more it's worth. You don't want to become a land don't wanter. You want to become, like I said, a land hoarder, a land addict, which is literally what we've become, because I understand what's happening in these areas and I understand how quickly land is running out. So infrastructure, we have 2 more trends and we'll be done. Basically, where the roads go, the people go. There's a clear and powerful linkage between investments in infrastructure and future growth. So here's an example of one of the many different infrastructure projects coming in down there. This is Freeway 5. This is Highway 138, which cuts across the Antelope Valley. So you can see here's Lancaster and Palmdale. This is the Antelope Valley right here in the middle. Highway 138 goes all the way out to Freeway 15. That road is a very dangerous road. There's a lot of accidents happening on this road, deaths that are happening. It's really bad because of all of the traffic for goods and regular population going through these roads. Today it's a 2-lane road. What do they plan on doing to this road? Pink, magenta, pink, magenta. So from a 4 to 6-lane expressway is going to be coming in. This will probably be the very last freeway ever built in Southern California, and it's going to be going right through the Antelope Valley. Just that one infrastructure project alone is going to cause tremendous amount of growth. And of course, at Valour, we know where that freeway is going. We know where future freeway on and off ramps are coming. These maps are coming from the California Department of Transportation. So what do you think we do? We go in, we're buying land for literally pennies on the dollar now, And imagine what that land is going to be worth when that infrastructure comes in. Imagine owning a piece of land right off of a freeway on and off ramp. I actually positioned an investor here. She bought that land around $1.20 per square foot. Within the first year of owning that land was already selling before the infrastructure even came in nearby for $9 per square foot. So it gives me goosebumps to think what that one piece of land is going to be able to do for her and her family. It's huge. So again, that takes us back to that example I showed you in the very beginning. And this was just a freeway on and off ramp coming in. Look at that development and growth. So infrastructure is a huge key when it comes to land banking, and we pay close attention to that. And last but not least, energy, causing the largest land rush in California's history, all for something all of us needs every single day. The greatest shift of wealth in the history of the world is happening right now, and it all has to do with our energy sources and us moving from fossil fuels to alternative green energies. And this is a global situation. It's happening throughout the world, and it's also causing the largest land rush in California's history. Right now, it's gotten to the point where alternative energy is actually a cheaper form of energy creation than traditional fossil fuels is. Plus, on top of it, of course, it's helping to save the environment. But one of the main factors that's pushing this is the money. So why is it the greatest land rush in California's history? Literally, square miles of land is disappearing left and right for massive utility scale solar projects. This is an actual picture of one of the new projects that recently came in. It's over 6 square miles of land. This is only a portion of it that you're seeing here on the screen, right in the Antelope Valley. And we own the dirt underneath it. These guys can't come in until they have the land. It is a land hungry industry. And right now here in the US, we are on the cusp of an unprecedented solar boom. And California happens to be leading the way with this. It all started back in 2005. Governor Schwarzenegger said, hey, we need to cut back on carbon emissions. It is unacceptable that 7 million people die every year from pollution. That's more than murder, suicides, and car accidents combined. So by the year 2050, S305 stated that by the year 2050, we need to cut carbon emissions by 80%. Most people don't even know that bill was passed. Then Governor Brown started passing multiple bills on top of that and to start eating away at that huge, huge goal. And the last bill he passed was Senate Bill 100, which says by the year 2045, we want 100% of our energy coming from alternative energy sources, meaning that zero carbon sources. All of the buildings, houses must be getting their energy from alternative energy sources. That's a huge goal, and that is only 26 years away. By the way, by the year 2026, 6 years from now, we want 50% of our energy coming from renewable energy sources. And today, we are at about 33%. And just to get to 33%, we have seen hundreds of square miles of land being consumed by solar. And then on top of that, the governor says, well, that's not good enough. We want to be carbon neutral, meaning we're not creating any pollution. And what is the biggest polluter of all here in California? And this is what's really going to take this to the next level. The biggest polluter of all is our transportation. Everything out there on the road. That's what's causing major pollution. So they want to pass Assembly Bill 1745, which says by the year 2045, we want to ban the sale of gas-powered cars, meaning only electric vehicles will be sold here in California. And as a matter of fact, the demand for combustion engine cars, gas-powered cars, if you're looking at studies across the globe, may have already peaked in 2018. I mean, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're on the cutting edge here, and everywhere I go, I see Tesla cars. If you look at the studies out there on car sales, Tesla is blowing all these other car companies out of the water. That's why companies like Volkswagen, second largest car company in the world, is saying we're going to stop making gas-powered cars altogether by the year 2026. And it's not just California that's doing this. Countries throughout the world are saying we're going to eliminate gas-powered cars. So the car companies are realizing this is happening. Tesla's taking over. They better start changing. They're actually retooling their existing car manufacturing facilities to go from internal combustion engines to now electric vehicles. And it's not just Volkswagen, it's every car company out there is doing it. From GM to Porsche to Jaguar to Ferrari, they're all doing it. And it's not just consumer cars, it's trucks, it's buses, it's tractors, it's boats, it's planes. Planes, trains, and automobiles, everything is going electric out there. By the way, just to power this Tesla semi-truck, it requires as much power as 3,500 homes does per hour. That's how much power one semi-truck needs. So how are we going to power all of these now electric vehicles, all of our transportation? Where is that going to come from? It's not going to be coming from oil. It's not going to be coming from fossil fuels because that would defeat the purpose. It's going to be coming from clean energy. That's how we're going to be powering the transportation sector. That is going to require so much energy. There's probably not enough land available in California to do that. And the best part about it is we know exactly where the solar is coming. It's in the perfect environment. The infrastructure has already put in. Billions of dollars has already been spent creating existing solar facilities as well as putting in the high tension power lines, which is the infrastructure needed to carry that power into the grid. So we're in the perfect location for it here in California. And this area, the Antelope Valley, is actually being dubbed now the alternative energy capital of the world because of everything that they've been doing for the past 10 years. I mean, we've been watching this for almost over 10 years now. That's how on top of this that we are, and that's why we can say that this is the largest shift of wealth in the history of the world, because this isn't something we just made up yesterday. This has been a lot of research behind what's happening around alternative energy. So we're positioning investors right in the middle of this land rush. Here's an example of a property that my husband and I owned, 10 acres, 39,000. We bought it in July of 2016. Very affordable price, 39,000. The reason why it's so affordable is because it is unzoned land. So it's not zoned for traditional types of real estate, which is exactly what these solar companies need. And so actually we're seeing a struggle for land, a land competition between solar and traditional development. And both are needed there in the Antelope Valley, which is great for us as landowners. So March 2017, basically a little over 6 months after I bought my property, we received this solar land lease offer from a developer who wants to lease that 10 acres of land. And on land leases, we typically see a 20 to 40-year land lease. Their initial offer to us was only 11% per year on that land lease, which is very low, but you never take the initial offer when you get offers from developers. They can always go higher. They're just trying to see who they can steal the land from first. And then the smart people who have someone like Valour helping them out, we do the negotiations. So our goal is to get anywhere from 1,000 to upwards of 2,000-3,000 per acre per year on that property. And as part of those negotiations, we also received this map from the developer. So our property is inside of this green tropical solar boundary. By the way, this is thousands of acres of land, just the green. then you have the orange, then you have the black. Those are all different solar facilities that are coming in. They sent us this map, which I then take back to Valour, and Valour uses that to help other investors negotiate, but they also use that to acquire more land. This is legal insider information that Valour receives by helping their investors to negotiate with the developers. So I actually helped one of my investors buy a property that was already inside of the solar boundary. Sometimes people say, oh, well, this is too good to be true. Valour only sells the bad land. That's not true. Valour has actually sold land they have already received offers on. And actually, it's written in the policy that they must sell all of the land that they acquire. They cannot compete with their own customers. So that's part of their policy, that they sell the land that they acquire. So again, this is the greatest shift of wealth in the history of the world. Literally, a wall of money is fighting for US solar projects, and it's causing the largest land rush in California's history. Welcome to the future of the world, really. So this area is known as the Narrowtopolis, cities of the future, where you have affordable land, bargaining airport, freeway capillaries, rail access, close to a major metropolis. Those are the types of cities you want to invest in. You don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere. Other major investors in this area, and this is coming from the Greater Antelope Valley Economic Alliance, Richard Branson, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, have all been investing billions of dollars in this area on different projects. By the way, Warren Buffett has one of the largest solar projects, almost 8 square miles of land out there in the Antelope Valley. And I have investors who own land literally touching his solar facility. So this comes from the Denver Post. Land is one of the safest investments in the world. Land can't be hidden, lost, or stolen. But if you want to enjoy the safety and benefits of owning land, you want to talk to a land specialist, because it's very risky if you don't know what you're doing. And you also don't want to be caught in the future saying, I coulda, woulda, shoulda bought that parcel of land for the safety and future of my family. That land and that growth is going to happen whether you buy it or not. 10 years is going to go by whether you buy it or not. So we only like to work with true investors, and based off of Warren Buffett's definition, an investor buys an asset based on what it will do over time. Never buy anything you can't hold for 10 years. Versus a speculator, they buy and sell based on the movement of the price going up or down, like the stock market. One day you can retire, the next day you can't. If you like that roller coaster ride, all the power to you. Good luck. That's not for me. That's not what land does. If you want something that's safe and secure, that has created wealth throughout history, this is what land does over time. The value continues to go up as there's less and less of it available. Not until there's a building on top of that land does it then go into the traditional real estate ups and downs. Completely different types of investment, land versus traditional real estate. So we focus where the pre-developed stages, cost is minimal, time to development is shorter, typically 7 to 10 years, and that's where you're going to get the most equity gain for your property. General Douglas MacArthur describes what we do best when he says, all a man has to do to become rich in America is find out where people are going, get there first, buy land while it's affordable, and then wait. It's really that simple. So options for investing in land with us, there is no financing for it. It's cash only. If you have an old retirement fund or an IRA, we can help you roll those over into self-directed IRAs. Probably 80% of my customers do that. We've done these types of transactions many times, and we can help you through that. We can recommend some companies that we work with. Tenancy in common, you can partner with other people. You can have up to 4 non-blood related partners per property, or 8 blood related partners per property. You can also partner with yourself. So let's say you have an IRA that you want to invest with, and you also have some cash you want to invest with. You can basically partner with yourself, buy the property with part IRA and part cash. Certificates of disappointment at 0.002%. Basically, you're losing money to inflation. So you can pull money from there. Loans from retirement accounts, you want to talk to your individual custodian about that. Cash value life insurance is a possibility. Lines of credit you can do. However, we typically don't recommend going into debt to buy land. We are an anti-debt company. And corporation, if you have a corporation you want to buy it with, you can do that. And if you are doing a 1031 exchange, so if you're selling a building, you can take some or all of those proceeds and buy land. If you're doing 1031 exchange and selling a rental property, you can take some or all of those proceeds and buy land with that. So at Valor, we say instead of investing in a company, invest in the asset that every company, and like I said, everybody needs. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you learned more about land banking, and if you feel that this would be the right opportunity for yourself or for a loved one, please get in contact with me. My name is Marcella Silva. You can contact me at marcella@dirtisgold.com. Our website is dirtisgold.com, and my number is 925-337-2513. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us today. Your time is valuable, and we truly appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you.